live on YouTube, live on Instagram. Okay, welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. This is Clinical Tuesday. My name is Dr. Miller Armstrong. I am a lead faculty for spine division and the lumbar and cervical management courses. So thank you so much for hopping on today. I have such a fun time. We're going to actually kind of wrap up like this small little mini series that we've been doing over the last couple of months. And so just to recap real quick before this last part. So back in July, on the first one, we just talked about clinical success and what success even means. And whatever it means for each individual, what you have to do is make the decision whether or not you want to be successful. And so we kind of just talked about that. And so it's one of those things where if you make that decision is all that's really required. And then after you make that decision, really what you do is you don't have any wiggle room. So you do everything that's required of you after making that decision. So the first part is just whether or not you want to be successful. Afterwards, so last month, we talked a little bit about really kind of, that's great, but what about when people come in and they're doing a little bit worse, right? And so the first thing is that we have to handle that with humility. We also have to handle that with grace, because that builds a lot of therapeutic alliance, being able to look at John and say, John, you're not doing better. Like you're actually doing a hair bit worse. So people trust us when we're more honest with them and when we humbly kind of admit that, hey, you're not doing better. The second part of that is that we have to be able to pitch them hope. The way we're able to pitch that person hope is on day one, treating one thing. So I mentioned Jordan Berry's podcast from a few years back, but the expert treats one area. Because if I don't know if it's John's back or John's hip, and I treat both, then if he comes in and he's worse, we still don't know if it's his back or if it's his hip. So if we just treat John's back and John comes in worse, then my hope pitch to John is, well, John, dude, it's your back. Like, we only treated your back and your back got worse. So you are getting a little bit worse. We need to fish around and figure out what type of vigor you can tolerate, but it's your back. So those were the first two things we really hit on. And today what I want to talk about is the next 5 minutes. So what does clinical success look like in the next 5 minutes? If you've never taken lumbar or cervical management, one of the things we obsess about is building the person a bike. But not building the person the bike on visit one only. We also have to build them a bike on every subsequent visit as we go down that plan of care. So on visit 2, on visit 3, on visit 12, in the first 5 minutes, we want to build that person a bike where we adhere to the test-retest model, where we really jump into the asterisk signs. I always like to think of asterisk signs as those data points on a line graph, and we're seeing the trends. Are they going up? Are they going down? What does it look like? And so that's what we obsess over here at ICE, is building that person the bike, showing them their success, showing them if they're getting better, showing them if they're getting worse or staying the same. Whatever that is, in the first 5 minutes, that has to happen. But what about the next 5 minutes? So like we say you do that and you're really dialed in, but what about the next 5 minutes of treatment? Like, what does that session start to look like? And that's what I want to talk about today. So we do the whole thing about building the bike. We look at our two subjective, we look at our two objective, and then say the person visit over visit is staying the same, or say they're getting a little bit worse. I think one thing that we can probably all agree on that we may jump to too quickly is totally changing treatments. And what I would implore you to do is, number one, the first thing that's on our mind as somebody walks in and say they're the same or they're worse is I want to look at their HEP, because I want to make sure that they're actually getting worse from the things we're doing, or they're staying the same and we're not seeing any change from the things we're doing. Especially if that person had a little bit of bump forward in your treatment session. Meaning if that person came in and you did some things, and say it's their lateral hip, and you gave them like side steps or sideline abduction, and they got a little bit better, so you sent them home with that. and then they come in and they're worse or they're no different. The number one thing I'm thinking of is, okay, well, Nancy, let's hop out in the gym and let's see what your HEP looks like. Because I don't know about you all, but there have been times where we look at their HEP after that, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, it's not necessarily what we're doing, it's how we're doing it. Maybe the dosage is incorrect. And you thought Nancy was going to have like a really hard time with 10 reps on sideline abduction. And then you tell her, you do a couple rounds and you're like, well, Nancy, now I want to see a max rep. And she does like 38 reps. Oh, we might be on the right spot. Maybe the needling gave us a really nice bump forward, but the needling is way more aggressive than a very sub-maximal rep range of sideline abduction, so we dosed it wrong. Maybe she's doing the exercise completely incorrectly. Like the thing that always comes to mind that we always joke about at cervical is the snag stretch. So cervicogenic headaches, maybe we crack their upper cervical spine, throw some needles in the suboccipitals, whatever that might be, but then we give them a snag stretch to go home. And when they go home, they switch their arms. You know what I'm talking about. You spend like 6 minutes in the clinic trying to describe it. You take a couple videos, you send them the videos, and then they come back in. They're like, dude, it's no better. I don't notice anything. You retest all of the things. You try to build them that bike, and it truly is no better. And then you're like, okay, well, Doris, go ahead and show me that snag stretch. And when she shows you, she just turns her head to the right and gives herself like a rear naked choke and does it completely wrong. Okay, well, let's actually correct that. So maybe it's just a problem in our HEP, either our dosage, either we didn't cue it correctly, we didn't explain it enough, or they didn't do the HEP because we didn't show them the value in the HEP. So if the HEP is wrong, well then take that treatment to really, or that session to really start to dial it back in. Versus if they're doing it really nice, and it's in everything you would want to see out of the HEP, well then by all means, now get back in that room, start doing a couple more physical exam measurements and things like that, and trying to kind of sift through what you maybe missed or what you were too vigorous with. So if they're the same or if they're worse, then I'm immediately thinking, what does that home exercise look like? Let's get eyes on it immediately. Now, what if the person's better? And this is kind of where I want to spend just a couple more minutes and a few more moments talking about some things that we can utilize when the person is better. So one of my favorite podcasts that was done here on a Clinical Tuesday was Mark Gallant. And so it was episode 1727. And what Mark talked about was the paradox of being a fitness forward clinician. And it was a really profound episode where he kind of went into the nuances of, hey, back in the day, what physical therapists needed to do was just start getting more into like strength dosage, just getting people moving generally. But as that has elevated and the fitness forward clinician has really come onto the scene, we've become the first line of defense in a lot of areas and in a lot of clinics for the fitness athlete. And so the paradox is that, but what the fitness athlete doesn't necessarily need is more hip thrusts or more squats. What the maybe novice needs in the fitness realm, somebody that doesn't exercise or is brand new to it, they might need just hip thrusts for lateral hip pain. But he kind of used like Kelly Benfey as an example. So I was listening to it this morning again, and it was just one of those things where, so if you know Kelly, she's super fit, very robust human. Her ecosystem is really nice and dialed. And so if she had lateral hip pain, well, she doesn't necessarily need more hip thrusts, right? So that was kind of the paradox that he gave. And so I love that. And so what started to make me think about this episode was, how do we take that into treatment? So say you start building the bike and you're in that first 5 minutes and you retest everything and things are getting better. Now you have a decision to make. What we believe in at ICE is being an and clinician, not an or clinician. And what we mean by that is doing manual therapy and exercise, doing manipulation and mobilization, doing myofascial decompression and dry needling, doing general exercise. And all of these things can be combined to make the treatment session a little bit more robust. But even though we believe in being an and clinician, which one comes first? So if someone's getting better, and now I really want to double down on my treatment, let's keep it at the lateral hip. If the person is really fit, if it's a fitness athlete, and now I'm starting to think of, okay, should I do manual therapy, like local tissue? Maybe it's needling, maybe it's myofascial decompression, maybe it's joint mobilization, something like that. Passive treatment, like getting my hands on the person. Should I do that, or should I start with getting out in the gym and doing some exercises to target that lateral hip? Maybe it's side steps, maybe it is that side lying abduction, maybe it's a side plank, whatever it is. Even though I'm going to do both in the treatment session, which one should I start with? And I think we can equate it to Mark's episode. So we can equate it to, so say Kelly walks in and she just got done with the CrossFit games and her lateral hip is banged up, and it's this time last year, and her lateral hip is banged up. What Kelly, or I guess I should say, the way we would show our value to the fitness athlete is by going at the local tissues first with manual therapy, because their ecosystem is really dialed in. Like, they're eating correctly, they're sleeping fairly well, they are trying to deal with some stress, they're recovering really well, like they're already going to the gym a lot, so their ecosystem is really nice and dialed. So we show that fitness athlete our value by going out the local tissues. Kind of like the pitch of, hey, if you every time you deal with different bumps in the road on your fitness journey, like bumps in the road on the journey of fitness is expected, right? Like, that's the job. And so if you expect that because you're pushing your body, then where we can provide value is helping them at those local tissues with some manual therapy, and then following up with some really specific exercises, and really helping that person decrease that inflammation and kind of get back into their groove. So we can come alongside of their fitness journey. Versus if someone is like a Mark and needs a little bit more of the general strengthening, that person, you're going to go right after general exercise. So what you're going to do first with that person is, okay, let's hop out in the gym, let's throw a band around the ankles, and let's do these side steps. Maybe it's 20 steps either direction. Maybe it's a side plank, whatever it is. But now you're trying to provide value to that person by showing them that you are the one that can help them get on a fitness journey. And you're testing and retesting around that. So now they're not just totally reliant on your hands or on the tools in your toolbox to help their hip pain. Now they fully trust that you're the one that can help them change the way they live their life. So depending on who the person is in front of you, that fitness athlete where their ecosystem is really nice and dialed in, we're going after manual therapy probably first, and then following up with some exercises. The person where their ecosystem is maybe a little bit less healthy and it's not as dialed in, and they need some help and they need some guidance in that area, show them the value of our dosage, show them the value of our programming. Still do some manual therapy, but maybe it's like, hey, we're going to go do 2 rounds, test and retest. Ooh, your manual muscle test got a lot better. Let's hit some needles, and then end with another couple of rounds, and you're going to go do that at the house and kind of help them alongside of that journey. So it's something to think about. Let me know what you think in the comments. Something to think about, just as far as first 5 minutes stay the same, but those next 5 minutes, you might be having to look at the HEP if they're getting worse or if they're staying the same. If they're getting better, then you have to look at the person holistically in front of you and make sure that what you're doing is showing them the value. And the way you show them value is that if they are already really nice and dialed and they're a fitness athlete already, you're coming alongside that journey with a lot of manual therapy probably earlier on and some specific exercise. The way you show the other person value that is maybe more of a novice to movement is now you take that person and you show them how much exercise can help them, and you test and retest around that. And they can't believe how side steps help their hip pain so much. So we love that idea. Before we hop off, We do have some upcoming courses here in October coming up. So in our spine division, if you are looking to jump in on lumbar, Brian Melrose will be out in Boise, Idaho on October the 19th and 20th. So that would be the next lumbar course. So hop on the website, click the link, and sign up for lumbar if you're looking to get that in, especially if you're trying to wrap up that ortho cert. Maybe that's your fourth course you're searching for. Head on out to Boise near the mid of October. If you're looking to get into cervical, we have 3, so a triple weekend coming up here in 2 weeks. So myself will be out in St. Louis, in the St. Louis area on October 5th and 6th. Zach Morgan will be up in Madison, Wisconsin on that same weekend, October 5th and 6th. And then Brian will be out in Candler, North Carolina on October 5th and 6th. So hop in. Those still have some available seats. So don't miss cervical if it's coming near you here in the next couple of weeks. Cool. Team, that is another Clinical Tuesday. Thank you so much for hopping on with me. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll be back tomorrow. See you later.